Hi everyone, David Aragona and Craig Milkowski are taking a look at the feature race at Oaklawn Park on Saturday. Race 9 is the Tinsel Stakes, going a mile and an eighth on their dirt course for older horses. And Craig, we've got a field of 7 signed on, and horses that have been knocking on the door at the stakes level, but not necessarily horses that have been winning stakes in this division all year. So everybody in this race has something to prove, but it's a fairly evenly matched group.
I would agree. It's a pretty wide open race at the mile and an eighth distance. It's a division that, as we head into next year, is going to be pretty wide open. So maybe we could see a horse or two take a step forward.
Haven't yet seen the morning line for this race. I imagine runners like the number 2, Strong Quality, and the number 4, Speed Bias, will vie for favoritism. Both of those horses coming off big speed figures from their last couple of starts. Strong Quality having earned his in a big blowout victory last time. So we'll see how we bet this race, Craig. But those two horses, I think the important thing to note about them is that they're both horses that want to be forwardly placed. So as we take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race, we'll have to see how this pace plays out, because those two seemingly want to go to the front end. And even the number 6, Ardenwood, is a horse who has done some of his best running on the lead. So I understand in a small field why there's no fast pace flag, but I could see this pace getting somewhat competitive towards the front end.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think the exact same thing. I think all the top 3 we have shown do their best running on the front end. I did the math when I was previewing this race, and I think it was just 1 point away from having the fast pace flag. And as I handicap the race, that's actually how I'm going to treat it. Like, the pace is going to be very solid to fast.
And if that pace really does heat up, the number 7, Dennington, might benefit. He's got the LP flag on the pace projector, indicating that he has the highest Timeform US late pace rating in the field. We'll get to him at the end of the video. Let's begin towards the rail with the number 1, War Campaign. And he's a horse, Craig, that has run pretty well in a number of starts going back over the past couple of seasons. Hasn't yet claimed that elusive stakes victory, but he's run well in some optional claiming and allowance races. Switched to turf for a few starts over the summer, went back to dirt most recently, closed well 2 back in the slump at Keeneland. I was a little disappointed in his last race, though, when he went back to Churchill Downs, just not able to muster a strong enough rally.
No, that was a pretty strong allowance race, as you can see by the race rating there. This one's actually lower for the stakes race, just the 117 coming in. But I still wonder if even his best race is good enough against a tough field like this.
He would be another horse that would benefit from any pace that might develop towards the front end. The number 2 is Strong Quality, and he's a horse that's coming off a big blowout victory last time. It wasn't off the turf race at Churchill Downs, so I question the quality of the field he beat a little bit, and the horse who was second that day, Johnny's Fireball, got in some real trouble coming out of the starting gate, and he was supposed to be the main rival to that horse, or at least the bettors thought that he would be. But still, Strong Quality won the race by nearly 10 lengths and earned a 121 Timeform US speed figure. And when you go back to his dirt races prior to all of those turf efforts over the summer, Craig, and into the winter of last year, he was running speed figures at 110, 112. So it stands to reason that maybe he just improved that much from the course of his 3-year-old to 4-year-old season.
It's certainly possible, and it's not so much that I question the speed figure. I just worry about the pace situation, as we already talked about. He had everything his own way on the front end that day. He did it setting a solid pace. I mean, you can see the pace figures are strong for the card, but for the day, but he was just all by himself, never really got challenged, ran away at the end. And I'm always a little bit leery that a horse can reproduce that kind of figure.
And we should say, it's not as if that performance came out of nowhere for Strong Quality based on his recent efforts. He was a pretty good turf horse, actually went off at 9-2 in the Grade 1 Arlington Million over the summer, just got involved in some unfavorable pace scenarios on the turf. So maybe getting back to dirt is going to allow him to make better use of his early speed. Number 3 is Seize the Night, and a horse who's been a little bit up and down in terms of performances, coming off a turf race last time. Actually, a pretty good effort on the turf where he outran his 37-1 odds to be 4th behind some stakes caliber foes, earning a nice 118 Timeform US speed figure. But he's run fine on the dirt going back over the past year. Craig actually was a winner of a pretty tough allowance race at Oaklawn Park back in April, beating Speed Bias, or we're going to talk about in just a little bit. He's now making his 3rd start since the trainer switched to a new barn. He had been with Dwayne Lucas. Now he's with the former Dallas Stewart assistant, Jade Cunningham, who has this horse for her 3rd start now. So it feels like he's run okay in his last couple of races, and maybe he's going to get a better pace setup this time.
I agree. Since the barn change, that first race on dirt, he had no pace whatsoever to run into. Just never really had a chance. I thought he ran fine in his turf race last time, and you can see before the trainer change, there's certainly some speed figures that would make him competitive in this field.
And going back through his past efforts on the dirt, you could see he was against a pretty unfavorable pace scenario too back in that ACAC at Churchill Downs. Extremely slow pace, all color coded in blue. He had no chance to close that day and really didn't get the right trips in a few of those Ellis Park starts where it seemed like the inside and the rail was the place to be for a few of those race cards. The number 4 is Speed Bias. Let's take a look at his last race when he was a narrowly beaten third in the Grade 2 Fayette Stakes. And you could make the argument that he's actually getting a little bit of class relief here after finishing behind horses like O'Connor and Il Miracolo, ahead of some runners who had also shown graded stakes ability in the past. And this race got a pretty big speed figure, a 124 assigned to Speed Bias, Greg, and he digs in pretty gamely down towards the inside, even getting in fairly tight in the final 16th mile of this race as the winner comes over on him a little bit. Speed Bias, he's run these kind of numbers before. He's a pretty talented horse. The problem with him is he just can't seem to find the winner's circle.
He can't seem to find the winner's circle, and a lot of it I think has to do with pace. But even when the pace scenario has been in his favor, he just doesn't seem like a horse that likes to win. And in this particular race, I think he's going to have to fight for that lead early, and it doesn't fare well for him late.
The number 5 is Double Crown. Let's take a look at his most recent race in the Bender Memorial at Laurel. This race, he finishes second at 7-2, going the 7 furlong distance. Makes a mild late run to be second behind 7's 11, who just ran off on the front end this day. This horse has popped some big efforts at large prices in the past, Craig. I do question whether a mile and an eighth, 9 furlongs is just a little bit beyond his scope.
Definitely. I still remember when he upset the Kelso. Seems like forever ago because this horse runs so often, but he's a horse who recently just doesn't have the speed figures that stack up. I guess if the pace heats up, that would help him given his running style, but I too question if he really wants to go this far.
The number 6, Ardenwood, is an intriguing new face in this race. We'll take a look at his most recent victory at Delaware Park when he won a starter handicap race and just dominates on the front end and draws off to a pretty impressive score at nearly 10-1. This horse has just been improving over the course of the past year, Craig. He's won 4 of his last 5 starts, actually all 4 of his dirt round attempts since coming back from that layoff in April, and just keeps getting faster every time. But this is going to be a big step up in class for him.
This is a much stronger test. I'm always a little leery. I think I've mentioned it on some of our previews before. When horses are winning as easily as he has, I like to see better speed figures, maybe than even the rest of the competition, because he's likely to regress a little, in my opinion, when he faces better competition, particularly on the front end.
And closing out the field is the number 7, Dennington. He is the horse that could really benefit if the pace heats up on the front end, because he is that horse that likes to drop towards the back of the pack and make one late run, just like he did last time at Churchill Downs when he was last through the early stages and was able to pass everybody on the stretch to get up to win by a length over Wyco, who's been in pretty good form for Wesley Ward in recent starts. That race was going a mile, and it also featured a pretty honest pace. I know none of the pace figures are color-coded in red, but they were moving up front that day, and Dennington was able to close them down. He's a horse who hasn't really been successful in stakes company, Craig, doing his best work in these optional claiming races, and notably, those are the races in which he can use Lasix. And kind of going through his past performances, he is a horse that seems to produce his best results on Lasix, but we'll see if he can do it coming off Lasix here.
Yeah, I mentioned in the beginning I was expecting a fast pace, and this is the horse I think it would benefit the most. He was kind of off form earlier in the year, but I really like his last couple races. His speed figures have improved. I think the mile and an eighth is going to help him, so I really like him in this spot today.
Let's throw up our picks for this Tinsel Stakes. And as Craig was saying, he really likes Dennington in this race, hoping that that pace does heat up, and it definitely seems like that is a possibility. I was viewing him as a little more of an underneath type, but he definitely is moving in the right direction in his last couple of starts, Craig.
Yeah, it's just a race where I suspect the pace will eventually have some red fractions in it, given the quality speed. Not just that we have 3 speed horses. They're 3 very good speed horses, and it's pretty easy to imagine them dueling for the lead and things setting up late. And I do like that extra furlong that it's going to get on Saturday.
And I see you don't think my top pick is too crazy. You've got this horse in second, the number 3, Seize the Night. Just feels like one that could be a fair price in this race, going out for a fairly unfamiliar barn. Third start off after the trainer switch, and ran put it pretty well on the turf last time. I can make some excuses for his prior dirt races before that, and I feel like this one might have the potential to take a step forward, and another one that could benefit if the pace heats up towards the front end. So the number 3, Seize the Night for me, and the number 7, Dennington for Craig in race 9 at Oaklawn on Saturday, the Tinsel Stakes. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.